from Amnesty International, and ties go back that far. There was also another thing about, again, I have this thing, 10 reasons why Mumia is innocent, and it goes to, throughout the years, again, all of the witnesses, there were 3 prostitutes, they all recanted their testimony, and they all said that the police threatened them, that if they didn't identify Mumia Abu Jamal. William Singletary was a local business, and the only eyewitness who saw the whole incident. The police suppressed Singletary's original statement that he saw a shooter fleeing the scene. It couldn't have been Mumia Abu Jamal because Mumia Jamal was on the ground. A man who did not fit Mumia's description. In the 1995 hearing, Singletary testified how he was coerced and intimidated by the police, who tore up his written statement and forced him to sign a different false statement, which they dictated. His version of events is supported by Desi Hightower, who witnessed the 5-hour police interrogation of Singletary. So they have all these things, more witness manipulation, Veronica Jones, and so many trial travesties, as they were called. And again, Faulkner was killed by bullets from a .44, and Mumia's gun was a .38 caliber. So there's all this evidence, and as it stands now, Judge Taylor has ruled that there's enough evidence for a new trial. Surprisingly enough, and sadly enough, the new DA is planning to appeal. Why? And just for me, why he and Seth Williams also did the same thing, which is strange because they really shouldn't even be bothered with it. And Seth didn't say that when he was running for DA, but he somehow, and I believe that the FOP, which has a lot of power, the Fraternal Order of Police, dictates that whole thing. They've been using the widow of Daniel Faulkner all this time.
Sorry,
but
didn't know it was.
So
that was on.
So the case is now and again why Larry Krasner is appealing when the judge has ruled that it's just for a new trial, that there's more than enough evidence that it deserves a new trial.
Larry Krasner doesn't want the new trial? Is that what he's appealing?
He's appealing the judge's ruling. He's going to appeal that there should not be a new trial.
He doesn't.
Which, again, I'm like you. He dodged the question at the library because people asked him, and the move people, of course, will win it. But it is kind of a bump in the road because the other things, the cash bail, or some of the other things. But why he's involving himself in the Mumia case, which he shouldn't even, why the judge made a ruling and okay, let it play out. So I don't know. I don't know why he's doing this. But Seth Williams did that, of course, and it's just kind of strange. So the pressure from the FOP is my educated guess. So that's where it is now. Mumia, of course, is suffering from hepatitis C. There have been many attempts to kill him. And one of the things about Mumia is that whenever you hear him talk, and he's written a number of books, and his CDs is known all over, the international support for Mumia is worldwide. But one of the things, if you ever have not listened to him, you hear just a dedicated, really brilliant commentator. But he's concerned about that the hepatitis C is his latest thing. Now he's in jail, so he's rather because there are now more than 800,000 estimated people in jail with hepatitis C. Pfizer organization, there's a cure for hepatitis C that Pfizer has, but it runs an average of $90,000 a year. Pfizer refuses to lower the price. They, of course, are that thing in the White House. I don't know if they can make them, but obviously they're not going to. So, but you have all these predominantly men. So they're in jail, and then when they come back to the community, while it's curable, it also can be slightly contagious. So Mumia has it, and they refuse to treat him. Mumia had to file a thing where they let him use it, but they won't give, hoping, of course, that he would die. But they won't give it to other prisoners. And Mumia is fighting on behalf of those prisoners. And that, I think, is the makeup of this man. He very seldom talks about himself. He has talked about being comfortable with death. Yes, they've been trying to kill me since he was 14 and joined the party. But, so that's the kind of human being that I believe in there.
And how old is he now?
He's 50, I'm sorry, no, he's born 54, so he's 64? 64, right, yeah. So he's, But that is the, let me see if there's anything else. I think that was the main thing. I just kind of wanted to, I guess people have questions. And
Yeah, the thing I remember most about, first of all, I remember him on the radio. He was on NPR
Right.
just about every day.
Yeah.
And then just suddenly this happened. It's like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, the other thing that really sticks out to me is that he always refused to speak in his own defense.
He said he refused to
He refuses to speak in his own defense.
He did not take the, he did not testify in his own
Right.
trial,
He
right? And
won't-
neither
he
did his
doesn't do
brother.
that.
I'm not sure that's strange because I'm not sure whether that was defense strategy or his own. I think it was his own. I'm not sure why.
But the defense, the lawyer that he was offered was
Right.
completely inadequate.
Right.
He was up against a judge. First of all, the judge was manipulating the whole process of the trial
Yeah.
toward a preconceived end. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Amnesty has criticized the conduct of the judge as making the trial completely unfair. I mean,
Yeah.
but his counsel was not adequate. He did not have time to prepare, and it was a death penalty case
Right.
involving a police officer. So the FOP was putting tremendous pressure on the judicial system to get a conviction. I think
Yeah.
that's entirely reasonable.
Yeah.
Eric, I'm glad you mentioned that Mafia and Rizzo connection because during that period, Rizzo allowed the Mafia to flourish in South Philly, but his henchmen gave the Panthers hell. And the other thing, the two times that bombs were dropped on U.S. citizens inside the country, both of the times it was on black communities in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and here in Philadelphia. And another footnote, the police allowed the neighborhood after the MOVE bombing to burn for nearly 2 hours. So scores of innocent people that had nothing to do with MOVE, who might even have been the ones who was complaining about the MOVE people and their lifestyle,
Right.
their houses, their lives were ravaged.
Yeah.
But there was so much propaganda against them. I remember this because they said they left the kids filthy, they didn't feed them. I remember because I was in South Philly, and you could not say a word against Rizzo in South Philly. And they were, Bruno, I'm hearing the name.
Yeah.
Because but you couldn't say a word. This is the first I ever heard, and growing up in that neighborhood, that there was any kind of connection there.
Again, it's hard. The library has a Rizzo file. Before you came, there's a pamphlet that I was proud to work on, one of the first, called Rizzo and the Police State. And we documented the Temple Free Press and Bill and Judy Biggins from Toronto. And Rizzo had them deported back to Toronto, by the way. We published a thing that showed, we documented that on Monday morning at approximately 9:30, without fail, Rizzo would go to a room at the airport and met with Angelo Bruno where he got his orders. Angelo Bruno was Rizzo's boss. Because Rizzo was not, he rose fast through the ranks because, again, he was a loyal, he protected the harmless vices, the gambling and that kind of thing. But Angelo Bruno, of course, had the reputation of the nice Don and this kind of thing. But that's how Rizzo got to the board. But that's where he got his order. So another journalist first said, so we had pictures, we documented that, and they said, okay. So that was known. And again, Frank, Rizzo, of course, the other things about Rizzo, and again, the whole document I talked about Arthur Davis, which I'll tell you later, just about a black man who was beaten, but those kind of things happen. Of course, the raid on the Panther offices. Oh, that's right, yes. I was supposed to talk about the infamous raid on the Panther office where supposedly they made the Panther strip. And you can see the famous, I forgot to bring that. That's what I should have. This was on Columbia Avenue.
In Oakland.
No, here. This was here. This was the black party here, yeah. I forgot where it was. I wasn't in the city, so I heard about that. But yeah, they made them strip to their underwear. So that famous, you see the cops with the police with the guns and this kind of thing. So that was here, on Columbia Avenue, 2925 Columbia Avenue, which I got to go back and see if that's still there. But
And who did they kill? Cleaver or Newton? Which one got
Huey-
killed by the cops?
well, it wasn't Cleaver. Cleaver
One of them.
left the party. Huey Newton was shot at by the cops. He survived that a couple
But
of
I
times.
saw
But he-
pictures.
Someone was
Robbers.
murdered. Someone
Well,
was in their
he was
bedroom.
murdered.
Oh, Fred Hampton and Mark Clark
Okay.
in Chicago.
Yeah, in Chicago.
They were murdered. They shot 14-year-old Bobby Hutton, one of the first party
I
members.
saw
of
pictures of him in the emergency room, and Rockford when I took it, my teacher showed us, of the cops around his body, just hammering away
Yeah.
and punching him in the emergency room.
Huey P. Newton, is one of the most, and like I said, he really was a brilliant, just philosophers,
Seal's
teachers.
alive, right?
No, unfortunately, Huey P. Newton had,
Bobby
later,
Seale.
Bobby Seale's alive and still cooking in Philadelphia, yes. Bobby Seale is
Teaching
still on
in Temple. No?
He was teaching at Temple, now he's doing community organizing, but Bobby Seale is, again, I'm talking about a working class veteran from that area. And he has that tough, gruff exterior, but he really is a kind of caring guy. I had the pleasure, he was, our party chairman. And he told me to go to, he said, go to Tallahassee. And I said, okay, well, all right. I said, well, I don't get there. I'm in Washington, D.C. He said, well, that's what we do. So in those days, you thought, and that's why I went to New England. It was part of that idea of, and I understood. He said, well, hitchhike so you can talk to people, white or black, and working class people, and that's how you learn. So back in the 60s and 70s, so I hitchhiked from here to Connecticut, and again was welcome and those kind of things. We had all those kind of things, but yeah. I don't know any.
Eric?
Yeah.
In the Mumia thing, I never understood why the brother didn't testify, because the brother was there. And you think that he would want to get it back.
That is, again, I'm not, and again, the kind of, just William Cook, I'm sorry, wait a minute, it is William Cook, his brother, Wesley Cook, okay. He just says I have nothing to do with it. And that's it. He refuses to talk about it, yeah. I'm not sure, and again, nobody really knows why that is, but I don't know.
But also, his brother was threatened after, Mumia got locked up. And, with time, movement developed to support him.
Right.
His brother and other people, like, I remember, I was still up in New York, the police were so bad. If you was to put flyers about meetings in support of Mumia, they would come by and give you all kinds of tickets and all kinds of harassment. So,
Right.
the police have been vicious about, keeping Mumia in prison and keeping his base of support weak.
I'm sorry, I meant to say this. I wanted to kind of give an idea of the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party real quick and how it kind of relates to today. But just to see, this was again 1967. I'll go through the 10. The first one is we want freedom, we want power to determine the destiny of the black community. We want full employment for our people. We want to end to the robbery of the capitalists of our black community. We want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We want all black men to be exempt from military service. I wanted that one too. We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. We want freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. We want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by a jury of their peer group or people from their black communities as defined by the Constitution of the United States. And 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And this was October 15th, 1966. And again, this was Huey P. Newton's first major thing. And of course, the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements, I think, are still I think this is such a great document. It still can be used today with modifications on press groups and communities. And there's a great thing about that Mumia published on the Panther Party, and he goes into details about how these things can be used to work in the communities. And I'm actually going to, thanks for this, I actually want to kind of hook up either a DVD of the case of Mumia updated at some point in the Ethical Society during the spring or summer. And also I will show a documentary on the Panther Party vanguard of the movement, that it kind of goes into the good, the bad, the beautiful and the ugly of the Black Panther Party, its impact. And the women of the Panther Party. I have I'm fortunate, I have a cousin that some might know, Rosemary Mealy, who used to be here. She worked at the AFSC Quaker organization. She's still an activist, but she was the head of the Panther Party here for a time when the men were either in jail or in exile. Very quiet, passionate Quaker. And she was married to Ron Whitehorn. I think people know him of the Notebook, right? They were married, yeah. So I had the pleasure of serving under her. And of course so they were ahead of their times in terms of being very small. There were only about 10 or 11 of us, and the Panther Party here. And of course the police, the FBI records, which were, it was heavy surveillance, heavy kind of people, spies and just people. When I read my FBI report under the Freedom of Information Act, I go there, and it's strange because they have this thing, and they obviously had me under surveillance, even though they had the wrong name, because they did not know I was a draft dodger. This is strange, because to show you that the government is not omnipotent, they actually they accepted my name, and I can tell you now, my name is George. I used the name George Harris, because I forgot. I wanted to say George Harrison when I was caught, and I forgot to put the son on there, so they kept George Harris, and that's what I was known as the whole time that they were looking for me. So they had me down as George Harris, but they had us that there was a laundromat on Cecil B. Moore Avenue across where I used to take laundry, and that was all I would do. So they had us going that we were taking laundry in a bag and other secret documents. So we put it in the dryer, and that's where somebody would come and pick up the dryer, and that they had that in the FBI report. So I'm laughing about that. Okay, and I said I'm just going to keep it there. I'm never going to tell them that. But those are the kind of things that the surveillance was there, and again, there were nights when bombs were thrown through the office and bricks and this kind of stuff. They paid some young kids with drugs to burn down properties and throw bricks through theirs. So we know that because the kids, one time they threw the bomb through the wrong house because they were high, or they were, and fortunately, the people were injured but weren't killed, and that's when their conscience came, and then they said, oh no, I'm sorry, Reggie Shell, big gruff Reggie Shell caught one of them, and I think Reggie threatened to beat the kid up if he didn't confess, and Reggie had an idea, and he confessed, and later started working with the party there. But they talked about how they were approached by people, and that was part of the whole thing of just throwing bombs and planting dope or drugs on people and using that. And of course, Rizzo was the main target. He deported, as I said, Bill and Judy Biggins back to Toronto. I can't tell you what he called them, but he thought they were the worst. And lastly, one of the people that we worked with was Roger Taus, who was at one time head of the transport. Right. Roger Taus is an expert on the Middle East and one of the great, really a fine thinker. The police also, because Roger Taus was working with the Free Press and those organizations, was beaten so bad that he had a plate, a metal plate in his head. The police absolutely wailed on him, beat him almost to death. And Roger, fortunately, has survived that and went on to do other things in the community. But those are the kind of things that we had, and people were lost their jobs because they were said, okay, these people are communists, so everybody fired them, and they used the bulletin to talk about the new revolutionaries, but they printed our address where some of us lived, and they also printed where we were. So of course everybody was fired. And neighbors in Kensington were nervous because they thought these communists were here, and they, so we had to quell all these disturbances. So.
Eric, I read on the internet that there are 16 members of the Black Panthers that have been incarcerated for 30 years. Do you know how they did that? A lot of them looked like Mumia were in solitary confinement for long periods of time.
Well,
Do you know anything about those 16 people?
One of them, I think, Geronimo Pratt was one of the most famous, one of the leading members of the party. But he was released maybe 2 or 3 years ago. That was one part I did not.
But what was the reason for incarceration?
Oh,
30
wow.
years
That, I would have to, you know what, I actually forgot. That I have to look up because it could have been anything from just, trumped up charges, drugs, or, I forgot Geronimo. Wow, I didn't know that. I apologize for not, that was one part of it I did not look up or forgot about that, but yeah. They were all, most of them were trumped up charges. I guess they were, even if you stop for a resisting arrest, and they had, of course they had 10 charges, and a couple of them stick, but yeah, I will look that up and kind of get back to doing that. I'm trying to think if there's, okay. Okay, yes, here, I'll take that back. One of the things that they used was that they changed the law in Oakland about open weapons. You could carry your weapon openly. So, of course, there's an act here, they name it. The California State Assembly Committee on Criminal Procedure discussed the Mulford Act, this was in Oakland, which would make the public carrying of loaded firearms illegal. So they were arrested for violating those kind of acts. So they would do those kind of things. And again, just make up things that, someone complained that was robbing. Again, drug charges were usually, most planting drugs on people was quite a one. Or, just carrying illegal arms, which they planted, some of that stuff was done. And some, again, that drug, when you had drug problems, unfortunately drugs came in there, so you had drug problems, and they pick you up for, drug use, and of course treat you as a drug dealer. And of course that goes on up until the opioid crisis. Of course, that's what happened to a lot of young black men and Hispanic men and women. That they had drug problems. They were drug users, and they got crack cocaine was the 3 strikes. So a lot of them are in jail, and once you get in there, they can trump up other charges in solitary confinement. So, yeah.
Is there a concerted effort to talk to Krasner's office?
You know what? I know the people, the Pan Africa and the Free Mumia Coalition. Yeah, they were. They'll be working. Yeah, they're asking people now to sign a petition. And I should have bought that too, but it's online. But I think to sign a petition, so they'll be agitating around that. And and it's kind of word. We support Larry Krasner because of the other great stuff, the stuff that he's done, the cash bails, some of the other things. But on this one, he's missed, and that, before the honeymoon is over, you really need to write this out. The other thing is, of course, Ron Castile, which also has ties to, Ron Castile is is somehow involved in that. He should have recused himself a long time ago. But he hires Ron Castile, and Ron Castile is a whole nother story of, Ron Castile just caused me to actually have a meeting with Frank Rizzo when he was running for a 3rd time. Talk about how irony of it. I met with Frank Rizzo to talk about HIV and AIDS, and when Rizzo was running for a 3rd time as a Republican. Because Ron Castile basically said that, AIDS is what these faggots deserve to die. He actually said that. I heard him say that. So he was not going to meet with us about any kind of humane thing. So Rizzo said he was going to meet with us, and it was like, to me, it was like a Twilight Zone episode. I'm meeting with Frank Rizzo. But he actually, it was strange, because it was like a whole, and I'm waiting for like the pod of Invasion of the Body Snatchers for the real Frank Rizzo to show up. But he knew he was dying, I think. And again, he was, But they met with him, and that's the only time I met face-to-face with Frank Rizzo. And it was strange because Ron Castillo was such a bastard about that. I really was surprised how nasty he was. And he's been involved in, I think, a lot of shady things as that. But why Krasner hired him is beyond me, but that's, you know.
I think we're running out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's appropriate if you read your letter now.
Oh.
He has written a very moving